Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Tom Wells here. Today is Monday, May the 7th, 2018, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, your first daily dose of happy for the day. And we're off to a blazing start here. The weather's gotten back into the normal range for a New England spring. We were up in the 90s for a few days last week. Now we're back down to the 60s where it's supposed to be. So it's
wow, 90s.
It was pretty. I went out at one point to get my car to go to the bank or something. I forget what. And you know how the cars now have little thermometer readings in there, and the thermometer reading said 99. I said, "You got to be kidding me!"
No kidding.
Unbelievable.
Oh my God!
And that wasn't from running the car. I mean, that was a car that was just sitting there waiting for me.
Yeah, gee, I guess everything's going to be just fine. Wow, that's pretty wild.
It is. It's very wild. How you doing? How was your weekend?
Well, it was good. I had some good times. Hang out with my friend Sheila a lot, and
nice.
I don't know. I spent some time with my family, with my brother and his wife, and we had a really great dinner. And anyway, yeah, great conversations. Felt really good. Spent some time out in nature. How about you?
Nice. Oh, we had a day trip yesterday. We decided to go to Stonington, Connecticut, which is down on the shoreline just next door to the Rhode Island border. So it's within shouting distance of Mystic, Connecticut, for instance, in New London, where the submarine base is and so forth.
So you have a town called Stoning right next to a town called Mystic.
Stonington, yes.
Yeah,
yes, right. Exactly.
Stonington.
Yeah, Stonington, yeah. And nice little town. I'd never actually been to the historic section of that town, but very nice little town. And then we went to Mystic, to one of our favorite places to have lunch, and we had a delicious seafood lunch on the water. It was great.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
I love that name, Mystic.
Yeah. Of course, most people know Mystic because of the movie from many years ago, Mystic Pizza. But Mystic is actually a beautiful town. It's a nice little town, very quaint, very New England-y, very cozy, very short on parking. But other than that, it's good.
Yeah? Wow.
Yeah, you really get a lot of practice in learning how to attract a parking place when you go to a place like Mystic, because there just isn't any.
Oh, wow. That's great. Hey, that's what our whole show's about today, is about how do you attract things using using the other realm.
And it worked too, because yesterday we drove up to the restaurant, which has a small parking lot, almost always packed, drove in, and there the very first parking spot right next to the door was ours. So it does work.
Yes, right. And you intended that.
I did. I mean, it was a light intention, but it wasn't even so much an intention this time. Actually, it was just more like a solid belief. It was just going to be there. I hadn't put out there, I want the parking place to be available right next to the door. It was just, the parking place is going to be there. Very simple. Yeah.
I do that a lot.
So how'd you come up with this particular topic today? This is an interesting one.
I always ask myself what's on the leading edge of my own growth and development. And for some reason, I went through some different wandering paths to find this one. I didn't really know what I was going to have as the topic for today's podcast. And then this one just evolved into, this is huge for me, because right now I'm in a process of needing to find a new condo to live in, and other aspects of my life too, things that have to do with my career and money and relationships. I'm really wanting things to work out, and there's a part of me that feels I have a lot on my plate, that this is challenging, that this is a time of so many things that need to go right, that I don't want to sabotage anything with my old habits of expecting things to go wrong or expecting them to not work out, because I had that habit for a good part of my life. I think of kind of strong in there. I also had the other. I had belief in life and belief that things can work out. But for some reason, it led me to this exercise, because we worked on a couple of processes the last few weeks, like segment intending and focus wheels, and the other one that we worked on was ask as if it's going to happen. What was that one called? But anyway.
Yeah. I forget what we call that.
Wouldn't it be nice if?
Wouldn't it be nice if? Yes, that's it.
Yeah. And so this is this is another process that's actually taught by Abraham-Hicks, which is called turning it over to the manager, which basically means, allowing there to be help from the unseen realm that you have so much faith in and so much expectation of success for the thing you're asking for that you ask unabashedly, you ask with complete abandon for the thing that you want, and then step into the place of accepting that it's going to be that way, just the same way you did with your parking place. You just step into a knowing and an assumption that, hey, I've asked for it. I'm trusting that there is this unseen realm that I can trust in, and I'm going to allow this thing that I'm asking for to show up. One way or the other, I'm asking for my life to work out in a really good way, and then you can get specific about it. So I decided that that's what I need to do a lot in my life. So let's have a podcast where we talk about how does this work? Mm-hmm. And of course, you just published your book, and it turns out that was significant because this book that we're publishing, is simply chock full of stories of how this has happened in people's lives. Right?
True. Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, it's not yet published, but no. It's been released to all of the 39, I think it is, co-authors of the book, so that they can all see, what the final product looks like and say, oh yeah, I like this, or I wish you changed this part, or whatever it is, And mm-hmm. So it's going to be published this month. That much I know now for sure, because once everybody approves their stuff, and once that's done, and I'll need to get everybody on board in terms of making their social media a little bit more accessible. There are some people who have certain things turned off, and makes it kind of hard to be sharing stuff and so forth. Mm. But once we get all that ironed out, then it's plug everything in through the createspace.com website, which is where we'll have the paperback built up, and where we'll also build up the Amazon Kindle settings. And once we've got that built up, start the social media campaign, set a date, and boom, we're off. So I think it's very safe to say we are going to be publishing this book before Memorial Day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Congratulations.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to all of us, because this has been a major effort by a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading a lot more of the stories, because I've barely gotten into it at all, and I want to read some of those stories. So that's, in a way, what we're talking about today is how do we allow these magical things to happen? I mean, law of attraction is this, in a way, it's like a magical thing, because what you're saying by practicing law of attraction is that if I focus on thinking about it and feeling into it, it's going to manifest. And today we're talking about one aspect of that. And I could read a tiny little bit here from Abraham-Hicks about it.
Yeah, let's do that. Sure, because the kind of thing you're describing, where we just get into that mindset that it's going to happen. It's not, I'm going to try to make it happen. It's just, I'm confident it's going to happen. I have found I have not yet learned how to get into that mindset deliberately each time. It just kind of happens to me that sometimes my resistance level seems to be low, and then all of a sudden, boom, it just feels good. So I'd love to know how to do it deliberately.
Yeah, and we can talk about that this whole show, because there's a lot of ins and outs to the thing, a lot of aspects that are going to come up to us. But imagine you're the owner of a very large corporation, and there are thousands of people who work for you. There are employees who assist in the manufacturing and marketing of your products. There are bookkeepers, accountants, and advisors. There are artists, advertising experts, literally thousands of people all working to make your company successful. Now imagine that you do not personally work with any of these people, but you have a manager who does, and your manager understands them, advises them, and directs them. So whenever you get an idea about something, you express it to your manager, who says, I'll take care of that right away. And he does, efficiently, effectively, precisely, just the way that you like it. You may be saying to yourself right now, I'd love to have a manager like that, someone I can count on, someone who would work on my behalf. And we say to you, you do have a manager who is that, and much more. You have a manager who works continually on your behalf, called the law of attraction. And you have only to ask in order for this universal manager to jump to your request. The key to the success of this process is to make requests with an expectation of the request being fulfilled. It's like asking someone you trust who has never let you down to do something, knowing full well that he will get it done. That is the attitude from which you must make your request to the universe. Make your request with the attitude of expecting results. And then they go on to give a whole lot of different examples.
Okay.
And in the end, they say, when you first play this game, you may find yourself challenging your own request by doubting that your wishes will be carried out by your manager. And of course, if your doubt is more dominant than your desire, you will be right, and you will see no evidence of your intentions being satisfied. But if you will continue to play the game, getting into the spirit of delegating to this universal manager, your doubts will fade, your expectations will increase, and you will get evidence that will confirm the power of your own mind. It's an exciting day when you come into conscious awareness of the amazing power of your intentions. We cannot begin to describe to you the resources that you have at your fingertips. Those that defy description are standing in readiness to assist you. You have only to find a way to access those resources, and turning it over to the manager process is just the tool to help you do that. Over time, this process will change your perception of your life, and when your perception of your life changes, your life will change.
Okay, so that's encouraging. So let's review again. How do you do it? I mean, what are the steps here? Okay.
Well, you basically just ask for what you want. Let's say like today, I'm going to be carrying all this furniture to my garage on a hand truck, and knowing that I'm, turning 70 this year, it's a little bit challenging to carry heavy objects anymore and to move things around and up and down stairs. But I'm going to ask that I have help today.
Nice.
I'm going to ask that I have actually some strong, young, muscled guys that help me coordinate getting this stuff to the garage and using leverage in very coordinated ways, and that it's done in a nice, easy way, and everything gets placed in the garage where I need it to be, because I have to take pictures of some of these objects that I'm selling and things. And just that it's a smooth, fun process, and it's all just going to be done in a timely way. So when the owner arrives to take pictures of this condo that she's selling, everything will just be copacetic. It'll all be arranged really nicely.
So it's really the normal 3 or 5 step process, depending on how you want to look at it, but with the understanding that this universal manager is the one that's doing step 2.
Yes, and there's another book I want to tell people about that. It's called Hiring the Heavens, Hiring, Hiring the Heavens, by Gene Slatter, Slatter. And it's called A Practical Guide to Develop Working Relationships with the Spirits of Creation. So the whole book is stories and the process of how do you ask for help from the unseen realm. Mm-hmm. And my friend Sheila, that I've been spending some time with lately, she's been a psychotherapist for 40 years. Oh, I shouldn't use her name. Anyway, I just did. But anyway, she uses what she calls devas. There's this thing that the Druids actually, I think, were the ones who used to speak of this. The Druids from many European countries had this group, this religious spiritual group called the Druids, and they talked about the devas. The devas were these spirits that lived in nature that allowed everything to flourish in nature, and they also brought about the change of the seasons, I guess. But mainly they were like the ones that brought, the vegetables alive on the vine, that brought the tomatoes alive, that brought the buds alive, that turned into the peach, that turned into the apricot. All this beauty that would show up in nature was caused by these spirits, you might say, that were making sure that everything in nature functioned in a very beautiful, organized way and brought about the abundance that we see in nature. And my friend was saying how you can call on these beings at any time, these devas, and they'll help you. So in a way, this book, Hiring the Heavens, or this idea of asking your universal manager for help or asking the devas for help, it's all the same thing. That it's basically saying, are there literally forces, beings in this other unseen realm that are ready to come at our beck and call to help us in a multitude of ways if we ask for their help? And this book, Hiring the Heavens, is basically this testimony to the fact of how many stories she has in there of people who have asked for help, and they simply create miracles in their life. She goes so far to say that you can literally ask for an entire committee. If you have a project, like say when you were writing your book, you can ask for a person to work with the editing, a person to work with, producing the manuscript, a person to work with the cover, a person to work with making sure all the stories get it in on time. It's not really a person you're asking for. You're asking for some kind of an unseen helper. But she says, you can give them names, calling a copyright, editor and a proofreader or whatever they call these different,
mm-hmm.
functions that you would have in creating a book.
Right.
But that you can get so into having help from the unseen realm that it can literally change your entire life forever. And in a way, that's kind of what Abraham-Hicks is saying, what Abraham is constantly saying. If you ask and then trust that the universe is going to give it to you, then the whole thing is, how open can you be to just let it come, let it happen, let it in? And
True.
I realized in looking at all this, how much I do this in my life. I mean, I just spend a lot of time watching little miracles happen constantly. How, it can be a lot more than parking places. It can be like the way you go to the store and you're looking for a particular, like I was looking for a particular gift for a friend. And I knew that if I went to this certain store, the gift was just going to show up. And I didn't know what the gift was going to be. And so as I went around that store, it had a whole lot of wonderful things, clothing and, little beautiful things to put on the counter and boxes and all kinds of gift type things. But I found this thing that literally spoke to me. I mean, it literally, I was led to it. And then when I gave it to my friend for her birthday, she was just blown away. It was the most perfect gift. And that gift has become a centerpiece in our relationship because it was so much the right gift. And the same with the card that I gave her for her birthday.
Very nice.
So anyway, that's a long explanation there, but there's so much to it, I think, of how do we rely on this unseen realm.
Well, the thought that was going through my mind as you were describing the Druids and their divas is that this is an old concept that we're now accepting once again. I mean, there was a time, I would say, probably starting around the 16th, 17th century and dating right through the end of the 20th century and even into the beginning of the 21st century to some degree, where the idea of spirits inhabiting nature and inhabiting physical things and so forth was laughed at. I mean, it's so completely unscientific. And now here we are again adopting these same belief systems that the Druids adopted. And how many religious contexts and traditions reject Druidism as being, paganistic and uninformed and so forth. And now all of a sudden it's like the wheel is turned around and it's come back the other way. And all of a sudden so many of us are saying, yeah, source energy is everywhere. Source energy is in everything. Wow. Who knew?
Yeah. Yeah. And that it can happen in these really wonderful ways. Like some of the qualities that she said when you're asking is, for example, is be really playful, create an attitude of gratitude, intend for the highest good, feel deeply into what you really want, have faith, stay unattached to the outcome, be patient. There's a lot of ways that we can ask that, and that's really what we talk about on this podcast every week. We're constantly talking about how do you ask and how do you allow it to come?
Mm-hmm.
Like Abraham said, we ask by knowing what we don't want. We literally ask for what we do want. We launch rockets of desire the second we know something we don't want, and we don't have to even get really that clear in our head about it. We just go through the process of having contrast that teaches us what we don't want, and then we know more what we do want, or we sit down and we actually do write out here's what I want in the area of relationships. Here's what I want in the area of money. Here's what I want in the area of career. I mean, I'm doing that with my new condo. Here's what I want in terms of a condo, but I'm also just trusting that life is going to hand me the most perfect place to live. And I just need to relax, because if I look at what's going on in the real estate market around here, it looks really tight. That the external world says it's really hard to get a condo and it's really expensive.
Right.
And there's tons of people looking. And, I have a one that came available next to me on Sunday, and literally 10 people came to look at it in the 3 hours that it was available. And know that if there's that many people, they were lined up at the door when the owner showed up to show it.
Right.
That things are going to go really quick. But if I have an attitude that the unseen realm is going to find this condo for me, and I'll make my effort, I'll look, of course, but I totally need to just trust that it's going to turn out in a beautiful way.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and that is the hard part. It's also hard for us sometimes to imagine, how could that possibly work? How could that possibly play out? I mean, okay, sure, there's something in the unseen realm, but what are they going to do? Are they going to stop people from showing up? What's going to be the ultimate factor? One of the things I like about the book that we're putting together, that's now put together and very, very close to publication, is that it contains quite a number of stories of people acquiring homes, many times in situations where it just didn't seem possible to do, and yet they did. In fact, you described the situation of a very tight real estate market, lots of demand, not enough units, prices going up, and so forth. And that's exactly what David Bartkey, our colleague who does the Sunday podcast with me, encountered when he wanted to live in New York. He wanted to live on the west side of New York, right near Central Park, which is like one of the most desirable places to live, and he couldn't afford it. He couldn't afford what was in that area. And he even describes in the story about how he would go through the cattle calls. That's what he called it. The cattle call was where you went to show up at an apartment that showed up on the market, and there were 25 people there. Not 25, and and it was this really lousy apartment with very little to save for it, and just a miserable place to live. And then he finally decided, you know what, Michael Beckwith, who he knows, he actually attended Michael Beckwith's church, taught me that you don't have to do it this way. You can use the law of attraction. And so he did. And he ended up attracting an apartment on Central Park West, right there, right on the road, across the road from where the park entrance was. And it supposedly was impossible to do. Well, how did he do it? Well, if you really look at it from a more, quote, realistic, unquote, viewpoint, what actually happened was Source led him to an apartment that was overpriced. It was priced above the market, so no one was willing to look at it. And then he made an offer that was close to the market, and it was accepted. Now, how do you find that? You find that by tapping into your inner being. Your inner being finds it for you.
Yes, yeah, and even then gives him the guidance, the impulse to ask for his price, and to believe that he can get his price, and to be in that place. Because obviously, if you look at law of attraction, you've got to be vibrating with the vibration of the thing you want. Get to the place where you're vibrating. And I think that's why in this book, Hiring the Heavens, she gives us suggestions about things like, be playful, and be, in this place where you already are in appreciation before the thing happens. Like for me, I'm developing this great sense of appreciation for the condo that I've had for the last 5 years. And a lot of that appreciation is coming from going out and looking at other places and realizing how great this one already is, where I am, and how I would just stay here if I could. And maybe it's even possible that will turn out that way. The owner's even said she's going to try to sell it to an investor. And if they want to just keep me in here, then I'll just stay here.
Wouldn't that be nice?
But it makes me realize, but is that really what I want? And then I think, well, I've really enjoyed this place. It's given me all kinds of great things, and I'm seeing all these beautiful things. So I only want to stay in an attitude of appreciation about everything that I've already had and everything that I currently have. But then even to ask myself, well, what would be even better than this? Because that's what I'm asking myself.
That's a good question.
And I recently found one that I thought was even better because it had such an amazing view. It was on a third floor, and you overlooked a park, and it was just, south facing, and had eastern sun, western sun, southern sun, a nice deck to sit on. And, and I thought, well, this is even better than what I have. And then that one actually got rented to somebody else. And And so I said, oh, well, that must mean there's something better coming for me.
Exactly. Yeah. That's not the thought we normally think, is it? We normally don't think, oh, there must be something better for me. We think, oh, God, I lost the good one.
Well, and even I've had several people say to me who knew that thought I was going to get the other place. They've said, oh, I'm really sorry for you. What are you going to do now? Or the realtor who was helping me rent the other one, she said, oh, I'm so sorry, and I said, oh, it's okay. There's going to be something better coming. That's all it means,
And that
because
is
otherwise this would have worked out.
Yeah.
This would have worked out, and it would have flowed. When things are meant to be, they flow also. I found that to be pretty true, unless, maybe I have a resistance in me that needs to be, released, right? Then sometimes I come up against that resistance and I feel the pain of it. And then I'm given the choice, to either turn around and run away from that in a sense, or to find a way to just allow it to dissolve, allow that resistance, by being with it for a little bit, well, wow, why is this not working out for me? Why is this not flowing? And then that points to the fact that something I need to let go of. And when I let go of that thing, then the ease comes, and then it's like the obstacle's gone, and the water can keep flowing.
Yeah. You mentioned the idea, too, that it was meant to be or that it wasn't meant to be, often called destiny or a sense of destiny. And I have to say that's a concept I've never really bought into. I know other people do who are into LOA. I've never bought into it. For me, what's really happening is your needs are going to be better met by the next thing. It has nothing to do with, you're destined for it. It's simply that you asked for something, you got example A, which was this third floor apartment that had the great views, but it wasn't perfect in every way. And the universe said, you know what? I got something even better that matches your needs better. So yes. I'm going to get that one for you. Well, that isn't destiny. That's simply need matching. That's matching up with the desires more closely.
Yes. Yeah. And so really that's the idea that I've already put into my vortex these things that I want, and the universe is going to deliver it to me as long as I can relax and let it in.
Right. That's the hard part. It's also the easy part, but it's the hard part. It isn't
necessarily destiny. Yeah, I have a hard time. But so many people say that if it's meant to be, it'll be. And I feel like part of me does kind of feel that there's something like that going on. But the meant to be really is what's in my vortex.
Right.
What have I and how much of it am I letting in? Sometimes I feel like I let in part of what's in my vortex, and I don't let it all in, and then I get sort of a halfway experience of, well, this is pretty much what I want, but it's not really what I want. But then I also look at it sometimes and go, yeah, but maybe these things that aren't complete for me here are telling me something. And you were talking about that before the podcast about how sometimes things, you have to just learn to accept, when you worked at the ad agency, how.
Oh, when I was talking about collaboration, yeah. When you work in a creative environment with other creators, and especially like in an ad agency where you're producing visual, for the most part, visual presentations of one kind or another, those visual presentations, each person works on their own piece of it, or maybe there are 3 or 4 people doing variations on something, and then the client picks which one they like. There's a lot of different ways it can be done. But the point is, your work doesn't always get picked. And that takes a little getting used to. And in a collaborative environment, it means that the combined effort, the combined creative effort is going to produce a result that ultimately gets picked by somebody as the final result. And that final result may not be what your contribution of it to it showed primarily. But your contribution may have been to improve one piece of it. A lot of people describe that as getting your ego out of the way. I've never really liked the word ego because I think it's really poorly defined. And plus, I think it's a rather negative way of looking at it. The way I look at it is it's about learning what part you can contribute to something. If I can contribute something to something that actually becomes the final product, then I take pride in the thing that I contributed, which is a much healthier and a much happier way of looking at it than, oh God, they didn't go with my design. Well, I think the same thing applies to our wants and needs where the law of attraction is concerned. And when the universe is delivering stuff to us, the universe doesn't say, "Oh, you didn't take what I gave you." The universe doesn't say, well, but it was so perfect. It was so perfect. Yeah, it was on the third floor, and I know you don't like the third floor, and yeah, it was a long walk from where you normally would go, but it had this great view. The universe doesn't say that. It doesn't even think that way.
Yeah. So that's a very interesting part of the whole game, is that we want something, we feel like we want, and we kind of feel like it's got to have this and this and this and this and this and this and this. And there is the thing, and many people speak about it in the law of attraction realm, and this whole podcast we're talking about is, okay, so you ask the unseen realm for the thing you want, and then you sit back in a way, or you make your effort, and the thing shows up. You do some action, or you wait, and then the right time comes, and then the thing begins to show up in your life, and then you know what to do next. But then there's the whole aspect of are you getting the thing that you want, and is it the way you want it to be? Because like in the world of relationships, for example, I can have some imagination of the woman that I want to be with, but life doesn't always hand me this person who's just, there's the 12 qualities I want, and they're all there, exactly the way I want them. It's like, no, I feel like I get a whole, array of qualities, and then it's for me to see either is this what I really want, and can I work with this? Can I allow this? And what's the magic here? What's the beauty in it? Or do I need to turn away from it and say, well, I'm still on my journey to finding what I'm looking for, and this is showing me that I'm well on my way. I've got a whole lot of the things that I want, but yet there's something even better coming for me. And I think it can be both. So many people talk about how, and even Abraham says, there is no perfection in this world. You're not going to get some perfect experience of the thing that you're imagining. You're going to get something, and sometimes it's going to be even better than what you imagined. That's the other aspect of it. And sometimes I think I get things that are confronting to me, because within that thing that's confronting to me lies something even better. And it's something I never could have imagined, because I'm going into the unknown, and from the unknown, something is going to show up that's going to be mind-blowing to me, because it's going to, for example, perhaps help me let go of something I've been holding on to my whole life. Some expectation that was really coming from a place that wasn't even that healthy for me. And that the thing I really want is a deeper thing, a deeper love, a deeper understanding, a deeper experience, a deeper beauty, something that I didn't even know I wanted. So it's quite a game, I think, to have our lives flow. It isn't just, I want this, I get it. I want this, I get it.
You use the word perfect, and it's another one of those words that we use a lot, and I used to be a really big-time perfectionist. And I've since come to dislike the term. I don't like it at all. And once again, I don't like it because of the way it's defined and the way it's used. For instance, one of the definitions using the word perfect as a verb rather than an adjective would be something like, make it free from defaults, from faults or defects, or as close to such a condition as possible. And what's problematic about that is we're focusing on faults and defects. Well, how can you possibly end up producing a quote perfect unquote thing by focusing on faults and defects?
Right.
You can't. There's no way to do that. That's just not possible.
Right.
And yet, that's the way we tend to think about perfection. So I don't like the word perfection anymore. I used to love it. I used to think it was really important. I used to think it was the thing that we went for. And now I think, boy, was I on the wrong track.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I had perfectionism bred into me from the time I was really small. And it's been a real problem in my life in the past. And I'm so glad that I'm understanding a little bit more about how it's never going to be quite like that. It's going to be something even better, but it's going to be more organic. It's going to be more real. There's something about the organic world that perfection is right there constantly in front of your eyes, but if you're looking for it in a certain way, you don't even see how perfect it is.
Yeah, and it's because we look at it in a way we don't see how perfect it really is. It's because we're looking for the flaws, we're looking for the faults, we're looking for the defects.
Okay.
And law of attraction teaches us, if you look for something, if you focus on something, you're going to get more of it. So you will always find flaws and faults and defects. There is no way to find perfection by looking for flaws and faults and defects. It can't be done.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to look for the things that you appreciate.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and that's a tough lesson to make sometimes, to learn, to kind of get your head around, because it seems like you should be able to just find all the flaws and find all the faults and then eliminate them, and you'll have something that's perfect. And that's not the way it works. It's kind of a strange thing, really.
Yeah, it's very interesting how we are creating our own realities and how we ask for help from the unseen realm, and if we're locked into some idea of exactly how that's going to look, we might not be able to then let in the help that's really there for us.
Yes.
There's got to be a certain level of acceptance or appreciation for how blessed we already are, I guess, to let in the kind of help that we need. I think it's a fine art to really receive this help. I was struggling like crazy on a computer project with this technical assistant that I work with sometimes, and we were trying to figure out how to use this whole automated system, from MailChimp, and it's a way to have your website and your emails function on an automated way, and we were just frustrated as could be, and we couldn't get the help we needed. And
by the way, that's par for the course for these automailers, so not unusual.
Okay. Well, anyway, it was so frustrating for me because I don't have a huge background in computer literacy and all that, because I never had to use a computer up until 2004, and then I just I'm not that great with them, and so that's why I hired a technical assistant. But then she couldn't figure it out either, and so I was getting so frustrated because I was paying her $25 an hour, and not a lot, but enough, and I finally just said, I'm just going to let the Devas take care of this. Like, you guys have to just make this work out, because it was a problem with this wizard like device called a computer that seemed way beyond my ability to understand what was going on. It was just challenging my logic and my ability, my patience and my tolerance beyond what I could tolerate. And so I asked for help. And then when I did ask the Devas for help, because I know there's these computer Devas who will go in and make sure that things work out. And so I just let go. And it was really a great feeling. It was like, how when you're backed up to the max and you finally say, I'm going to let go. In a sense, for me, that's the hardest time to let go because I'm so backed up, but it's the most relieving time to let go. And as I let go, it was really amazing because everything worked out. It was, okay, we can just do this. And then it was just a matter of in about a half an hour, a thing that we'd been struggling with for 3 weeks, just kind of resolved itself.
Isn't that wild how that happens?
Yeah. But it was so directly correlated to asking for help and just trusting that there's some way that this is all going to work out. That it happened with my car. I was driving into Boulder, where I live, the other day, because I live outside of town. And I had filled up with, I decided just to get a small amount of gas. I was in a hurry. And I went into town. And as I was going into town, my gas gauge, my computer readout was saying that I was using about 4 to 5 times the amount of gas that I normally use. I was literally watching, I would drive a half mile and it would say I went a mile. And so for every half mile, it was saying I was going a mile, and it was using it was using at least twice the amount of gas, but it was like a huge amount.
Yeah.
And so I was freaking out because I literally felt the gas gauge also was going down, that it had been above half, and that was at 3/8. And it said I went 52 miles in a period of going 7 miles is what it said. And so at first I was like, oh my God, I've got a big problem with my car. Something's really gone wrong. Oh, why did I buy a Ford? I've always bought Japanese cars, and now I bought an American car. I'm going to pay the price. And and so then my other side, my law of attraction, that kind of knowing side kicked in, and it said, this is going to work out just fine. There's something here is just not clear. So I was looking at, is the car leaking gas? I was looking on the road. I was trying to smell. I looked in the engine. Is there gas spewed all over the inside of the engine? Has a hose come loose? And this is a very modern car. This is a 2017 car. You don't expect anything like that to happen.
Right.
So finally I decided to go to this well-known mechanic in Boulder and this is Friday at 5:00. Everything's closing or already closed. And so I said, I'm just going to go in there and ask the question. They only work on Japanese cars, but I used to take cars to them because I know how good they are. And they're very patient and they're very helpful. So I went in and I told them what was happening. And there was 4 mechanics in the office. And it was the end of the day. And they brought over the head honcho mechanic. And he said, okay, here's what it is. I'm going to tell you. He says, because I told him the story. And he says, what happened is you put in $15 worth of gas. You should have filled it up, because these modern cars have this way. There's no gas cap on this car. You just stick the hose in the hole, but it has a pressure system, and that pressure system, hadn't read it right, because I had partially filled it. And I've done that before on this car, and it's been fine. But for some reason this time, the pressure sensitive device that gives all the readings to the computer in the car hadn't registered it properly, so it said it was using a whole lot more gas than it was. He said, go up to the Conoco here on the corner, fill up your car completely, and he says, I'll pretty much guarantee you everything will be fine. So I did that, and everything was fine.
Oh, wow. That's really something. Yeah. It reminds me of something with smartphones. What happens often with people and their smartphones is that over time, they'll reach a point where they notice that their battery just doesn't have any life anymore. And, a phone that used to hold a charge for 4 hours now holds it for 30 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
And so, oh, shoot, well, I guess I got to replace the phone, or I got to find somebody who knows how to replace the battery. And it actually has nothing to do with that. Believe it or not. It turns out that 9 times out of 10, maybe even 99 times out of 100, it's simply that the gauge that the little piece of software inside the phone that tells you that you're running out of battery doesn't actually connect to the battery, which kind of surprises a lot of people. They would think, well, it must be taking a reading from the battery. No, it's not. Actually, all it's doing is that based on how much activity it sees that the phone is using, it's estimating how much battery life is left. And so you think about it that way, you say, well, okay, that kind of makes sense, but then how could it get out of alignment? And as it turns out, if you do partial charges, or if you charge partially and then you run it down, then you charge it up some more, and you do that kind of game, which we often do, it will reduce the apparent available charge range of the battery as it tries to make adjustments to how much or how little you charged it. And it will actually reach the point where the software inside believes that there is significantly less battery life than there actually is.
Okay.
The solution for it, and this is true for any of the phones, is to run your phone completely down until it's dead, and then you do a complete recharge, plugging it in for like 8 hours, so that it's a sure thing, far beyond the point where it reaches 100%, because just because the battery meter reaches 100% doesn't mean it necessarily is. So you want to run it for, charge it for a full straight 8 hours. And then after it's charged, do a forced restart or a forced reset. Not the kind that eliminates the data. You want it to be the kind that saves the data. And each phone does it differently, so you have to look it up for your phone. Like on an iPhone, it's holding down the home button and the power button at the same time. That's how you do it. But if you do that on an LG phone, you'll wipe your data. So make sure you check how to do it for your particular phone. But when you do that forced reset in a way that preserves the data, it also resets the battery indicator. And once it resets itself, all of a sudden, you have 4 hours of charge again. Now, the battery didn't change at all. All that changed was the software. Yeah. But so many people, you would not believe how many people buy a new phone because they think that their phone needs to be replaced because the battery is no good anymore.
Yeah.
It's incredible how many sales get made that way.
Wow.
Yeah.
They must like that in the industry.
Well, I think that's part of the reason why they don't go out of their way to improve the battery meter.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, that's an interesting thing because that just happened with my computer, and so you just answered the question about.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Yeah, it's a very common phenomenon. Yeah.
You see,
Not that batteries can't wear out. They can wear out. They just take a lot longer to wear out than people realize.
But that's an example of how the unseen realm just helped me have a question answered.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah.
I had an unknown, and I had sort of let go of it, and I was just trusting that everything would work out. And then you just told me how to work it out if the problem persists.
And I told you on the podcast without realizing I was telling you that.
That's right. That's right.
That's funny.
But anyway, what these different, like Abraham-Hicks and this book, Hiring the Heavens by Gene Slatter, is saying is that you can get good at this. You can get good at developing your faith in the unseen realm and at asking for help, which I think is really cool. You were saying how, that's something you want to get better at, right?
And I am getting better at it, but yes, I do want to continue to get better at it. I want to get so good at it that I can just instantly connect and get the exact information I want when I want it and be ready to go.
Yeah, me too. Or if it's not instantly, then at least I understand how to be in the place of grace where I have the patience also to let the answers come.
Yeah, that's also good.
If they don't come instantly. But yeah, it's really nice. But more and more in my life, I'm living by, over the last number of years, by this principle of that believing that it's already in my vortex, the thing that I want.
Yep.
Therefore, it's just a matter of me relaxing and letting it in. So how can I allow, for example, the ideal condo to show up for me, even though I feel like, I want to just see it obviously show up. But how do I relax and just allow it to show up in the way that the universe intends it? The thing that's so funny about Abraham is they constantly are saying your source self knows how to orchestrate everything in the way that's the most ideal for you. So even though you might think it should happen in a certain way, I might think it should happen in a certain way, it's going to happen in the way that's the most ideal for me, but ultimately so that I can enjoy the journey. Which is really funny because then you realize, well, it isn't even about the condo I get. It's the enjoyment I have of getting the condo.
Which is pretty strange, isn't it?
It is, because part of me just says, look, I don't even want to go through this. I just want to have this place. And I want all my stuff moved right now, instantly. I want this to be done with, because who wants to go through a move, Mm-hmm. And yet this other part of me is going, if this is happening in my life right now, then it's perfectly orchestrated. So I'm looking at it, this is the chance for me to get rid of a whole bunch of stuff I've been carrying that I don't really want to carry anymore. And this is a chance for me to do it in a way that will be really liberating for me. So I'm going to go for these higher goals I've had for my life, which is to have a more Zen-like environment that I live in. Therefore, I can be a lot more decluttered. And this is giving me all these opportunities. And I just want to be in this place where I always see things as working out for my best interest.
Sure.
And that's the fun.
That is the fun. That's really good stuff. It's also the challenge, isn't it? Because we do have all of these resistances, and I really became aware of resistances, like 4 or 5 years ago, something like that, and recognized immediately that this was my big challenge. How do I, first of all, identify them? Because I didn't know where they were. My joke was I look at my chest and I can't find the off switch for the resistance. And so it was like, how do you find them? And then once you find them, how do you get rid of them? Because it's not like it's a physical object that you can manipulate. Say, okay, I'm going to rip that off and throw that away. Well, you can do that metaphorically, but and so it's kind of fun to do that little exercise as a way of releasing. But the bottom line is that it can be a bit of a challenge to try to release resistances. And yet, as it turns out, and I never thought this when I first became aware of resistances, as it turns out, it can actually be fun. It can actually be enjoyable. Now, the enjoyment usually comes in the form of relief. And anytime that I feel relief, you know what I do? I feel relieved that I feel the relief. Isn't that strange? But I really do feel relieved about feeling the relief because I know that the act of feeling relief means I let go of some resistance. And I don't even have to know what that resistance was. All I know is it's gone to some degree. I've released some of it because I felt relief. It's like, oh, thank goodness, more resistance is gone. Bye bye.
Yeah. And there's the a complementary thing to that. It seems to me is the ability to accept joy, accept fun, accept playfulness, accept things working out. That's something that I feel is new to me in certain ways. And one of the biggest things I want to develop from this podcast, from this subject, is the ability to trust that the thing that I want can come in a really fun way. That if I ask for help, like let's say I want to have a person on my committee in the unseen realm who's going to make finding a condo fun. And I want somebody on my committee who's going to make sure that I have an amazing view from my condo. And I want somebody on my condo finding community who's going to make sure that the price turns out a really great price. Because my resistance part tends to think, well, I'll get some of what I want, but don't expect perfection. And I'm not going to get everything I want, or I'm only going to get a few of the things I want maybe. And then I'll learn to live with the other stuff. It'll be okay. And that's that old part of me that just doesn't believe it's possible to have a life that is really fluid and really works awesomely. So there's both things going on, in a way.
I totally get it, because when I get that kind of feeling inside, and I know exactly what you're describing, I think all of us do, the first thought that now occurs to me is, oh, darn, I fell into the trap again. I just gave into my own sense of limitation.
Yeah. Oh, arguing for our own limitations. Yeah.
Argue for your limitations hard enough, and guess what? You get to keep them. No, I don't want them.
And it's because I don't want to be disappointed by wishing for something, thinking I want something, and then if I don't get it, feeling that let down, or that law of attraction doesn't really work, and there's not really a manager who'll take care of things, and there's not really a bunch of gremlins and devas in the unseen realm who are going to help me, because it's really on my shoulders, and I can get some help, but life isn't that easy, and there's no free lunch. And so it's like this combination of letting go and allowing and finessing my own struggle with my own life, my own resistances. It's I guess it's all one and the same, but
sure. Yeah. But those limitations, I mean, you just described a great list of them right there. That was a beautiful list of limitations. And how often do we put those on ourselves? I mean, wow, we are so good at putting limits on ourselves, and we don't think of it that way. I mean, I'm sure that the first time, or even perhaps the first 20 times that you said similar things to yourself, it never occurred to you you were setting a limitation, or even let alone a whole series of limitations.
Yeah.
And yet that's exactly what we do. It's incredible.
That's right. There's a story in Hiring the Heavens how this lady, this woman was working in her garden, and she was wearing this wedding ring that her husband had given her that meant so much to her, because they had a wonderful relationship, and this beautiful pearl in this wedding ring. And when she finished doing all this work in her garden, she came back in the house, and she was washing her hands, and she noticed that her pearl was gone from its setting. There was just the empty setting, and she just was devastated. She said, "Oh my God, I've lost this thing that's so precious to me." And she was just overwhelmed. But she had read the book Hiring the Heavens, and she knew about this idea of hiring someone from the unseen realm. But she thought, I can't do that. It's an impossibility. This thing is out in the yard somewhere. There's no way that would ever be found. And how would that ever happen? So she sort of said it, but then she sort of gave it up. She said, "Okay, I'm hiring a jewelry finder to find it for me." And then she kind of just gave up, not really believing very strongly that it was possible. And a little while later, she's on her bed playing with her daughter, and the dog jumps up, and her daughter goes, the dog has something in its mouth, and they make the dog spit it out, and it was her pearl.
Wow.
And I mean, that's this whole book of Hiring the Heavens is full of stories like that, one after the other, of how people have hired somebody in the unseen realm, even whole committees of people to help them with a project, and then just how it all fell together, all these amazing things that happened. So it's pretty cool when you get into that level of asking and then believing that it will happen, trusting that it will come.
Louise,
that's
actually,
where all the work is for me.
Oh, and for me too. I think for all of us too. Louise actually has a story along the same lines, the exact same kind of story in the book that we're putting together. A story about how she lost the gem from her wedding ring. 3 of the prongs of the setting broke, and she lost the gem, and she lost it while she was working in a daycare. And she was afraid, oh God, she'll never find that. But she kind of rejected that thought pretty quickly and adopted the belief, it's going to show up. I'm not going to worry about it. It's going to show up. And she tells the story of, what happened, this event, that event, that event. A series of things happen. And then finally, at one point, she goes back to the daycare to resume her next shift. And one of her coworkers comes out to her and says, how much do you love me?
Wow.
And she had the diamond. So,
wow.
Yeah, she got her diamond back.
I've learned to do that with things that I've lost. Maybe you have too, and other people who are listening. Is what I do now is I've gone through so much frustration when I lose something that I've learned, instead of going down that road and starting to look in every single place it could possibly be in my entire house and every pocket, and instead I use as my main technique now. I go, please just let it come back. Just show me where it is. And then in a lot of times I just let go. I might look a few places, but once I start feeling frustrated, I give up and I just say, just show me where it is. I just know it's going to show up. And that's where it takes the faith. Then I just have to sort of hang on, because what if I need it a lot right now, like my wallet or my keys, and yet so many times I find them when I finally get to the place of relaxation.
Right.
Just like when we had that computer problem with my friend and I working, and we finally gave up after 3 weeks of getting more and more and more frustrated. Then we finally gave up and asked that these devas take care of it. And they did, something totally took care of it.
There's a fun way to do this too, which is when one of the jokes that kind of circulates around whenever somebody loses something is, well, it's always in the last place you look, right?
Yeah.
And it's a joke because, of course, once you find it, you're not going to look anymore. So, of course, it's in the last place you look, right? It's just not going to be anything else. So the ideal is, well, why don't you just, universe, just take me to the last place I'll look first. That way I can skip all the other steps. I can skip all the frustration. It'll just be right there. Well, that's asking the devas to help. That's asking the universe, the universal manager, to deliver the result to you. It's really the same thing. So next time, just try saying, look, I don't really want to look for it. Show me the last place to look.
Yeah. I'm having a real challenge to do that with looking for a new condo, to really have faith that I don't have to pour through all these things online, every single possible place, endlessly looking. And that even causes me to look at places I don't even think are that cool. But, when I find myself doing that, I go, wait a minute, why am I looking at a place that's not even that cool? I only want a great place. So I'm only going to look at places that are really great. And if I don't see any, then it's just not here yet. And it's still coming. And just know that, it takes tremendous faith for me to just hang in there.
Yeah.
But I got to do that with everything in my life, relationships, money. I mean, just hang in there. It's all just going to work out.
Yep, that's what we're all trying to practice. That's what we're all trying to learn. That's what gives us a podcast to do, because there are so many ways to understand how to do this. So that's why we do it. We have about a minute left, actually a little bit less when you count the music. So in the time that's remaining, first of all, Tom, how does somebody reach out to you if they want a little personal attention? Because sometimes that can be helpful.
Yes, I love to work with people on any aspect of their life if they wanted to develop this law of attraction in their life and all these principles. And so I offer a free 1-hour coaching session where you can check out what it would be like to work with me. And you can go to my website, which is called youarejoy.com, youarejoy.com, and sign up for a free session. We can see whether or not you'd be a good fit and I'd be a good fit for you.
Sounds great. Tom, it's been a pleasure. Let's do it again Friday.
All right. Well, thanks so much.
Yep. And we will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.